You wake to a town that seems perfectly ordinary. Its streets quiet, its people going about their routines with a reassuring rhythm of normalcy. Yet beneath that placid surface lies the first ripple of unease, a disappearance so sudden, so inexplicable that it will haunt everyone connected to it for years. You are standing in the early morning mist when the news reaches you. Someone is missing. Not just anyone, but a young woman whose laughter used to echo down the neighborhood sidewalks, whose presence was as familiar as the sunrise. The shock settles in like a weight on your chest. She is gone, vanished without a trace, and the community is forced to confront a reality it had never imagined. The routine of daily life, once dependable, now feels fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a counter. You join the first responders at the scene, where neighbors speak in hushed tones, some trying to mask fear, others barely able to hold back tears. Every face you pass carries a silent question. How could this happen here, in a town that prided itself on safety and familiarity? From the outset, the investigation faces obstacles that would challenge even the most seasoned detectives. The missing woman left behind few clues, a few scattered belongings that hint at her final moments but fail to tell a story. You watch as police comb the area, their eyes sharp, their movements precise, yet the sense of frustration is palpable. Every alley is searched, every footprint examined, every lead followed, but the trail seems to evaporate with each passing hour. Witnesses offer conflicting accounts. Someone saw her walking near the edge of town. Another swears she left in a car with a stranger. You take in each story, weighing its credibility, realizing that human memory is often as unreliable as the wind that scatters leaves across the pavement. Despite exhaustive efforts, you and the team begin to confront a disheartening truth. Without hard evidence, without tangible leads, the case could slip into darkness. Days stretch into weeks. The police maintain a presence, canvassing neighborhoods, knocking on doors, showing photographs, yet answers remain elusive. The woman's family waits with a desperate, almost painful patience, clinging to hope even as each day chips away at it. You accompany officers as they revisit the scene repeatedly, searching for something, anything that might have been missed. And in the quiet moments, you reflect on the limitations that define the era. No surveillance cameras capturing every corner, no sophisticated databases linking fingerprints across jurisdictions, no rapid DNA analysis to match samples with potential suspects. The tools at your disposal feel primitive, a testament to the infancy of investigative science in this period. Months pass, and the initial flurry of activity begins to wane. The urgency that once drove the search diminishes as leads dry up. The case grows cold, settling into a file cabinet, a folder that sits untouched in a dimly lit office. You occasionally glance at it, a reminder of the unanswered questions, a symbol of the limits of human ability in the face of mystery. The community adapts, reluctantly learning to live with the void, while you carry the memory of that day and the weight of responsibility for seeking truth. That cold file, unremarkable to the casual observer, is about to become something far more significant, a turning point in the history of forensic science, though no one knows it yet. Even as the case goes cold, whispers linger. People talk in quiet corners about what might have happened, their theories ranging from the mundane to the macabre. You listen, documenting rumors with the understanding that, while they may not provide evidence, they illuminate the collective anxiety of a town gripped by uncertainty. You realize that this disappearance is not just a personal tragedy, but a societal one, shaking the foundations of trust and security. And in the silence of your own thoughts, you feel the stirrings of a resolve. One day, you will return to this cold case, armed with new tools and fresh perspectives, determined to uncover the truth that has eluded everyone for so long. The years pass, and you find yourself returning again and again to the files of that cold case, driven by a combination of professional duty and an almost personal obsession. Forensic science, in these early decades, is still in its infancy, a fledgling discipline fumbling toward precision, trying to impose order on chaos. At the time of the disappearance, techniques that now seem basic were either unproven or unavailable. Fingerprinting, for instance, was still a relatively new tool, relied upon by only a handful of trained specialists. Blood typing existed, but it was crude and far from conclusive. You examined the original evidence log with a critical eye. Strands of hair collected at the scene, fibers that could link a suspect to the victim, and other trace materials, all cataloged meticulously, yet misunderstood in the moment. They are whispers of truth trapped in a language investigators of the time cannot fully interpret. As you pore over these early records, you notice the patterns of missed opportunity. A faint footprint documented at the edge of a field was dismissed as inconclusive. A witness statement about a suspicious vehicle parked near the victim's last known location was never pursued thoroughly. You sense a frustration among the officers, a tension between diligence and the technological limits of their era. The tools they had were insufficient, their methods just emerging, and you can almost feel their desperation as they tried to construct a narrative with fragments of information. You trace the steps of those investigators with admiration and sorrow, recognizing that they were often closer to discovery than they realized, yet trapped by the boundaries of contemporary science. Time stretches and hope dims. Families and communities grow impatient as the passage of years erodes public interest. You watch as the case, once a headline-grabbing emergency, becomes a quiet note in the town's collective memory. Yet even as the case fades from public attention, forensic scientists continue to advance. Microscopes become more powerful, chemical tests more refined, and the understanding of trace evidence deepens. You see in these advancements a glimmer of promise, a chance for the forgotten evidence to finally speak. You wonder if the hairs and fibers and other collected materials could, in a future with more sophisticated tools, reveal secrets the original investigators could only dream of uncovering. Crucial pieces of evidence, once overlooked, now take on a weight that could shift the balance of the case. You revisit the scene in your mind, imagining how modern techniques might reinterpret what was collected. A fiber sample, previously dismissed as generic, could now be analyzed under new microscopes to determine its origin. A drop of blood, once typed simply as A or B, might now be subjected to genetic profiling capable of identifying an individual. You consider the irony. The same materials that once failed to yield answers now hold the power to unlock decades of mystery. And yet, you remind yourself, this is still a possibility, not a certainty. Hope remains tentative, fragile, like the flame of a candle flickering in a draft. You also reflect on the human element, the investigators themselves. The frustration they endured was immense. Each dead end weighed on them, each inconclusive lead a small defeat. They documented meticulously, stored evidence carefully, and yet were constrained by their tools and knowledge. You sense a quiet heroism in their persistence, even in failure. Their work lays the foundation for what is to come, an unseen bridge between the past and the breakthroughs that will eventually change everything. The years slip further by, and the case seems permanently frozen in time. Yet, as you examine the records and contemplate the evolution of science, you sense a turning point approaching. A chance development, a new technology emerging, promises to breathe life into the cold case. The files that once seemed inert are about to become active agents in uncovering truth. And you, patient and persistent, feel the stirrings of a renewed purpose to be the one to witness the resurrection of a long-forgotten investigation. The town's collective memory may have moved on, but the evidence, silent and waiting, is ready to tell its story. Whispers of doubt have been circulating for years, subtle and persistent. You hear them in conversations that take place in the quiet of the local diner, in comments at the edge of town meetings, and in the hushed tones of neighbors who never truly forgot the day she disappeared. People speculate, some suggesting she left voluntarily, others suspecting foul play. Rumors grow like shadows in a dimly lit room, each one casting doubt, feeding uncertainty, but never quite producing evidence. You sit with the files again, noting how these small pieces of anecdotal information, while unverified, reflect the community's struggle to make sense of a senseless event. The absence of answers leaves space for imagination, for theories that drift into obsession. But amid all this conjecture, the truth waits quietly, patient and immovable. Then, unexpectedly, a turning point arrives. You learn that forensic science has reached a stage where past limitations are no longer insurmountable. New chemical analyses, microscopic techniques, and the earliest forms of DNA testing offer the possibility of revisiting old evidence with fresh eyes. You examine the samples that were once cataloged and then forgotten, the hairs, fibers, trace blood, and other materials stored meticulously in the case files. What had once been dismissed as irrelevant now carries a potential significance previously unimaginable. You feel a surge of anticipation, the sense that you are standing on the edge of discovery, that decades of stasis are about to give way to revelation. Re-examining the evidence becomes a meticulous process, a careful dance between science and patience. Every fiber is inspected under more powerful microscopes, every hair analyzed for its root structure and characteristics, every trace substance subjected to newly developed tests. You watch as what was once invisible begins to emerge, details that eluded earlier investigators now clearly visible. A previously ignored hair shows markers that suggest it came from a unique source. A blood sample, once thought degraded, yields a profile capable of narrowing suspects. The significance is staggering. Years of uncertainty condensed into actionable insight, proof that the limits of earlier decades were never a fault of diligence, but of circumstance. As the evidence comes alive under modern scrutiny, you feel a complex mix of emotions: vindication for the original investigators, relief for the victim's family, and a nervous exhilaration that the case might finally be solved. The town, long accustomed to the weight of unresolved grief, begins to stir once more. You sense the growing attention, the renewed interest from law enforcement and media alike, as whispers of hope replace the old rumors of despair. This is no longer speculation. This is science speaking with authority, transforming anecdote into certainty. You also notice subtle patterns emerging that had been hidden in plain sight: connections between evidence points, relationships between individuals, and inconsistencies in past accounts now reveal a network of possibilities that were invisible without the lens of advanced forensic analysis. You begin to reconstruct scenarios, weighing probability against evidence, imagining what might have occurred on that fateful day. Each insight, no matter how small, feels like a step closer to justice long delayed, a small victory against the years of silence that have cloaked the truth. The weight of anticipation is almost unbearable. You realize that the case has shifted from being a historical curiosity to a live investigation where the stakes remain as high as they were decades ago. The evidence, once dormant, now asserts itself with clarity, forcing you and the other investigators to confront the reality that the answers have been present all along. They simply waited for the right tools to reveal them. And as you prepare for the next steps, you understand that this phase of discovery is critical. It is the bridge between doubt and resolution, between rumor and proof, between a community's lingering fear and the long-awaited unveiling of truth. The arrival of DNA technology marks a revolution, one that transforms the landscape of forensic investigation in ways previously unimaginable. You feel it immediately, the excitement of handling tools that can reveal a person's identity from the tiniest biological trace. The hairs, fibers, and bloodstains that sat idle for decades are suddenly alive with information. Where investigators of the past could only theorize, you can now establish certainty. The science itself seems almost magical. A swab from an old evidence bag, a sample long considered degraded, now yields a genetic signature. You witness in real time the boundaries between possibility and reality blur as decades of unanswered questions begin to resolve. The breakthrough comes unexpectedly, the kind of moment every investigator dreams about but rarely experiences. You are reviewing a hair sample that had once been dismissed as too generic to matter. Under the advanced techniques of modern DNA analysis, it produces a match, an identity that had been hiding in plain sight. The magnitude of this discovery is almost surreal. You double-check every calculation, every chain of custody, every procedural step, knowing that a single error could unravel everything. The name linked to that hair begins to tell a story, a narrative that has been waiting patiently for decades to be uncovered. It is the bridge between the past and the present, a critical link that transforms speculation into actionable truth. As the investigation accelerates, a suspect emerges. The evidence, once silent, now speaks with unmissable authority. You follow each lead carefully, corroborating the DNA findings with historical records, witness statements, and old investigative notes. Patterns that had once seemed coincidental now reveal themselves as critical connections. The town, which had grown accustomed to uncertainty, now holds its collective breath. You sense the mixture of fear, anticipation, and hope that permeates every conversation, every glance exchanged among neighbors. The invisible threads of decades-old events are finally being woven into a coherent narrative. The process of closing in is meticulous. Legal protocols demand thorough verification, and you navigate each procedural requirement with both caution and urgency. Every piece of evidence is cross-checked, every sample retested, ensuring that the eventual confrontation with truth is built on unshakable foundations. You coordinate with forensic experts, lawyers, and law enforcement officers, all moving with a shared understanding that justice is long overdue. The sense of history pressing down is palpable. This is more than a simple resolution of a missing person case. It is the culmination of years of scientific evolution, a testament to perseverance and the relentless pursuit of truth. As the pieces fall into place, you reflect on the transformation that has occurred. The tools that were once rudimentary, the evidence that was once dismissed, and the investigators who struggled against the limits of their era all converge in this moment. DNA does more than identify a suspect. It validates decades of meticulous work, reaffirms the importance of careful evidence preservation, and underscores the power of science to illuminate what was once obscured. You realize that this case, long dormant, has become a milestone, demonstrating the potential of modern forensic science to bring resolution where previously there was none. The town braces for the revelation, and you are acutely aware of the tension that surrounds it. The breakthrough is not merely scientific, it is deeply human. Families who have lived with uncertainty, with grief and unanswered questions are now positioned to finally confront the reality of what occurred. You anticipate the delicate balance of bringing justice while managing the emotions and expectations that have built over decades. This moment, forged from patience, innovation, and persistence, promises to be both a resolution and a transformation. The long dormant case, once a symbol of frustration and limitation, is now a testament to the power of science to reshape the narrative of truth. Confronting the past is never simple. You witness the weight of decades pressing on those involved, the victim's family who carried grief and unanswered questions, the original investigators who struggled to uncover the truth with the tools of their time, and the town itself whose collective memory has been shaped by uncertainty and speculation. Now, with DNA evidence in hand and a suspect identified, the past demands acknowledgement. You accompany law enforcement as they reopen interviews, retrace old steps, and piece together a timeline that spans decades. Each conversation, each review of archival materials forces you to reconcile what was once unknown with what is now irrefutable. The atmosphere is tense but charged with a sense of imminent resolution. The courtroom becomes the stage where science meets justice. You observe as experts testify, explaining the intricacies of forensic analysis with painstaking detail. The DNA evidence, once a series of mysterious numbers and patterns, is translated into a narrative that judges and jurors can understand. You notice the subtle reactions in the courtroom, the gasps, the nods of recognition, the silent acknowledgement that the impossible has become reality. Cross-examination challenges the process, but the rigor of modern science holds firm, defending itself against skepticism and procedural scrutiny. For all present, the trial is both an education and a revelation, an illustration of how meticulous evidence and technological advancement can overcome the limitations of the past. The process of legal reckoning is not merely procedural, it is profoundly human. You watch the suspect confronted with the evidence, and in that confrontation, decades of questions and rumors crystallize into undeniable truth. Families once left to dwell in uncertainty now have answers. The community, which endured years of collective anxiety, witnesses the long-awaited restoration of order and clarity. You see the emotional complexity unfold, relief, anger, sadness, and closure all intertwined, the culmination of years of waiting now compressed into a few powerful courtroom days. It is a moment that defines not just the case, but the lives it touched and the culture of law enforcement itself. Beyond the immediate resolution, you reflect on the broader impact of this case. The successful application of forensic science transforms public and professional perception alike. Investigators take note, legal scholars analyze procedural developments, and law enforcement agencies across the country recognize the potential for science to solve cases previously deemed unsolvable. You consider the legacy, changes in evidence preservation, advancements in DNA analysis, and the incorporation of modern forensic protocols into standard practice. One cold case, dormant for decades, has become a catalyst for systemic evolution, influencing generations of investigators and reshaping the landscape of criminal justice. Finally, you contemplate the personal resonance of the journey, the long struggle, the painstaking analysis, the resurgence of hope. These elements converge to create a story not only of resolution, but of transformation. The cold case that began as a mystery in a small town becomes an enduring symbol of perseverance, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of truth. You understand that the echoes of this case will reverberate far beyond the courtroom, informing practices, inspiring professionals, and offering closure to those who had waited far too long. Science, patience, and dedication have bridged decades, turning silence into clarity, doubt into certainty, and loss into justice. Looking back, the significance of this case extends beyond the resolution of a single disappearance. It illustrates the evolution of forensic science, from rudimentary methods to highly precise, technologically driven techniques capable of revealing hidden truths. The case demonstrates the critical importance of evidence preservation, meticulous documentation, and the patience required when answers are not immediately apparent. You see the courage of investigators who worked within the limitations of their era, their diligence laying the groundwork for breakthroughs long after they retired. The interplay between persistence, technology, and insight highlights the extraordinary potential of human ingenuity when combined with scientific progress. The emotional dimension of this story is equally profound. Families, communities, and investigators were bound together by the shared tension of unanswered questions. The eventual revelation provides not only justice, but closure, a rare and invaluable gift when decades have passed. You recognize that the process of confronting the past, though fraught with complexity, allows societies to reconcile with history and learn from it. In this case, science becomes a bridge between memory and truth, between grief and resolution. Finally, the legacy of this cold case is enduring. It has influenced investigative protocols, inspired generations of forensic professionals, and underscored the transformative power of DNA evidence in criminal justice. You reflect on the human stories entwined with the science, the fear, the hope, and the relentless pursuit of understanding, and recognize that these narratives are as critical as the technical discoveries themselves. In the end, the cold case that changed forensic science reminds us that time may delay justice, but it cannot deny it indefinitely, and that even decades-old mysteries can yield their secrets to those willing to seek them with rigor, patience, and determination.